So today we're going to talk about the X-H2 rumors and the question on the mind of every single Fujifilm user. Fujifilm, what the f*** are we doing? Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This is Talking to Myself, the part of the day where I talk to myself about things that I was thinking the night before while laying in bed. Shout out, of course, to the Kings of Leon, Los Angeles Dodgers, Saratoga Peanut Butter, Lotus Flame Candle Company, Dorian Coleman, who helped inspire this whole video, and as well as, I guess, Fujifilm US and Fujifilm North America for lending me certain gear and for being the reason why I'm making this video. And all 1,030 of you who have subscribed to me at the time of me making this video, I truly do appreciate it because I never ask anyone to subscribe. So thanks for doing that on your own merit. I have no idea why you're doing it. But we're going to go over a few things. First things first, the X-H2 rumors are exactly the same as the last time I made a video about it. Apparently the X-H2 is going to have 8K video. It's going to be priced for under $2,500, which is very, very great. I'm not sure if that's with or without a grip. And it's going to be able to do, I think is what one of the rumors is 6K, so 8K footage downsampled to 6K, so a full sensor readout on every single code, or basically form, 4K, 6K, 8K. But that should be able to do 60 frames per second at 6K and 124K. Amazing things, right? I don't know anything else. We haven't heard about the body, but the real thing that I want to get to is what exactly is Fujifilm doing with their camera lineup? We have an XS10, we have an X-T10-20-30 line, we have an XE line, we have an X Pro line, we have an XT line, and we have an XH line, all the same sensors, all with similar processors, and all do the exact same thing. Where does Fujifilm not only delineate what their pro and prosumer cameras are, but what are we going to do from here on out? I didn't mention the X100 line, because here's the thing. We're going to start having so many redundancies that things are going to get a little bit tricky. So with the X-H2, for example, it's going to have 8K, it's going to have 6K, it's going to have 4K, it's going to have these amazing bit rates, I'm sure, amazing color. Maybe it's going to have 10-bit internal, who knows? But the question is this, what do the X-T5 have? The XH line used to have IBIS where the XT line didn't. So does that mean the X-T5 is going to have IBIS and it's going to have the exact same things the XH has as far as recording, or else there's no reason to jump from the X-T4 to the X-T5. So where do they go? Same case in point, the XE4, what are they going to do to make it better for an XE5? Are they going to have to go weatherproofing? At that point, why would someone buy the X100 lineup? And if it's going to do all those things, where does that leave the XT10-20-30 lineup, the double-digit lineup itself? Especially with the implementation of the XS10, which basically where the XT30 was 90% of the XT3, but for around $1,000, the XS10 is 90% of the XT4, but for around $1,000. We haven't even gotten to the fact the X Pro line used to be the Pro line for Fujifilm, but now isn't getting as much love. So when you factor all these things in, one can honestly say, Fujifilm, what the hell is going on? Now, me and Dorian Coleman have discussed some things and we've spitballed in Fujifilm. If you want to make sure you get some great ideas and you figure out exactly what your company needs, come hit us up, because I think this video right here can justifiably be used by you to be able to meet some of the needs of your consumers. Let's start with the XH lineup. For the XH2, what I think would be the best thing to do is mold the grip into the X-H2. You'll not only save space with being able to put the grip into one body, but you'll also be able to put all the internals. Now we'll be able to move and shift further down into that grip as well. You'll be able to save real estate that way. You could potentially make the XH body thinner, and not only that, with it being thinner, it'll have more of an XS10 kind of feel and look, which I think really looks nice, very utilitarian, very SL2-ish. Now, for those of you who think I hate Fujifilm, the SL camera lineup is one of my favorite bodies of all time. I don't really care for the sensor because it's a regular ass sensor, but at the same time, the bodies are amazing. You can go ahead and do that. You'll be able to have all the same capabilities. It'll be a prosumer looking camera. You can have 2 batteries built in. It'll be this amazing thing. You can still have your 8K and everything, but that'll basically separate it from every other camera with the body itself, and then that can be your top of the line pro camera, especially for video, which is the direction Fujifilm is going with the XH lineup anyway. That's your XH2. For the X-T5, this is where it still is pretty easy. The X-T5 needs to become a more wedding photographer and sports photographer camera. It needs to be a photo camera. What I mean by that is this: if you're gonna upgrade it to a 30 megapixel sensor, which I see was one of the rumors for the XH bodies, which I can only assume would be the same for the XT bodies. If you're gonna upgrade it in that regard, you still need to have some things with it. For example, 30 megapixel sensor is great. If you're gonna do 8K or 6K in the XT bodies, that's fine, that's amazing. It already has IBIS, but what we really need is we need 25, 30 frames per second mechanical, and electronic maybe 40 to 50 frames per second. Now you may be thinking, wow, there's only about 15 frames per second mechanical right now whenever it comes to the X-T4. Well, you're gonna have to jump up, because I bet you anything with the processing power of the X-H2, it's gonna jump up as well to around maybe 20 frames per second, if not just 15. You're gonna have to beat that. So 20 to 25, maybe 30 frames per second mechanical, 50 frames per second electronic. Enable it to where with the processing power, it is able to kind of eliminate the warp that's going to happen in mechanical whenever you have people, or electronic when you have people moving. Upgrade the processor with autofocus is continuing to get better. You could still have the additional add-on grip. You can still keep the flippy out screen if you want. You can do everything that you want to do with video to make it play to videographers, which is still crazy to me that nowadays a camera that the bodies, which were originally used for photography, now have to have a certain amount of videography elements or else people won't buy them. But for wedding photographers and sports photographers, that would be a dream. You can still keep that bigger grip, that bigger battery, but think of how amazing it would be for wedding photographers to know in mechanical, I can get this much, in electronic, I can get this much, and know that they won't miss a shot anymore. Upgrade the grip a little bit. Put more things in it, make it a little bit beefier. I mean, there's so many things you can do with the XT lineup that would make it a little bit better than the XT4, but to the point I was making earlier, it's mostly going to be aesthetics unless you make it to where it's a sports and wedding photographer's dream. That's what you're going to have to do, is you're going to have to say, this is our D5. This is our camera that is for sure going to be a photographer's camera. The X-H2 can be like the Canon C70 or like the 1DC or the 1C whenever they came out with the 1DX and they had the 1C where it was a cinema camera in itself. The X-H2 can be that, but the X-T5 needs to be something that sports photographers, a la 1DX, a la the D5, that's something that they need to be able to go to. Wedding photographers need to be able to go to get all the sequence of shots they need, to where it's basically if you're holding down your spring and praying, you're making a movie yourself. Now the next cameras are where it gets really, really tricky, because these cameras are starting to step on each other's toes, and there's only so much you can add to them before people start feeling like, well, it's basically better to get this than it is to get this. And Fujifilm, you're gonna have some cannibalism, which is fine. You want more people with your cameras because the lenses are where it's at, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But the X Pro lineup is one that really needs a touch up. So X Pro, that sounds pro like professional. That's what it's supposed to be. Why doesn't it have IBIS? There's a serious question about that. That's the one thing you can add to the X Pro lineup that would probably make a whole bunch of people jump back to that. You can change the screen to where it's a flippy screen, to where it maybe pop up, pop down, pop to the side, or if anything, it can just be turned around and it can be pushed in to where you can't see the LCD screen, certainly like it is in the X Pro 3. But what else there to add? You can maybe magnify in the optical viewfinder a little bit more. The IBIS for sure would rock totally. Maybe, this is me personally, I would love to see a battery grip for the X Pro cameras. I would love to see a battery grip that could hold 2 extra batteries in the X Pro camera. I think that would be a balls to the wall amazing addition, especially for someone like me that prefers the X Pro 3 because I have a bigger nose. That would be amazing. I'd be able to get my nose out of the way and still have a professional body that also has a battery grip that I can use professionally. Case in point, I use the X Pro 3 for shooting sports photography. When it comes to the Spurs, when it comes to the SAFC or Austin FC, or when it comes to the MILB games that I photograph, I'm using the X Pro 3 as my main camera body. And so I would love nothing more than get a little bit extra beefier grip and a little bit extra boost when it comes to the X Pro lineup. Again, adding IBIS is something that you can do now that we've seen it added in the XS10 with how small that is. We know you can add it in the X Pro lineup. You haven't worried about making it beefier. Add the flippy screen. Don't care what street photographers say. They can flip it around. People that bitch are gonna bitch. Add the flippy screen. Make a battery grip for it. No one cares. Okay, listen, film cameras used to have those roll extender, whatever the frick they were at the bottom. Just make it look like that. Just appease the people you want to appease. If this is a Bessa R lookalike, continue to make it a Bessa R lookalike. But the X Pro 3, the X Pro 4 needs to be the professional camera that you're saying it is in the name. Now, when it comes to the XT 2-digit lineup, the XT10, 2030, what we didn't get with the XT40 and maybe the XT50, there's 2 things you can do. Kill it or add IBIS. That's literally it. Maybe add weather sealing. But at this point, because the XS10 was basically 90% of what the X-T4 was, or I'd say 80% of what the X-T4 was, you kind of have to do that with the X-T whatever line. And again, make it photography centric. So it can have HLG, it can have log, it can have all these things. Still cut down maybe the video record times of it to where maybe it's like 10 minutes in 4K or 6K, maybe 20 minutes in 1080p, but you can shoot F-Log. So you can still increase and upgrade it. Add IBIS to where it's a travel photographer's dream. But at the same time, make it to where for photography, now it won't have a battery grip, but make it to where for photographers, if they're wedding photographers or sports photographers, I've got a great B camera that can shoot up to 15 frames, 20 frames per second, and that's not even counting electronic. That's the way you're gonna have to go, Fujifilm. There's literally no other way you can bring that camera back without adding weather sealing, honestly, to all of your cameras. And this is the way that I think it would work to where everyone's pleased and you're not stepping on the toes of every other camera, which leads me to the camera that is probably stepping on the toes of that lineup even more, the XS lineup. So if you were gonna release an XS20, there's two things. Either you have to prove that it's not a gimmick and a one-time thing, because at times it feels like Fujifilm just wanted to throw IBIS in a body, or you're gonna have to just make it an X-H2 light, meaning it already has a grip like an X-H lineup. It needs to be your light X-H2, meaning make the two dials on top to where you can customize both of them what you want them to be. It can be a shutter speed dial, it can be an ISO dial, it can be an exposure compensation dial, whatever you want it to be. Just make it to where you can customize that. You don't have to put more bells and whistles. You don't have to put a Paperlight screen on it. Just make it to where those can be customizable. It already has weather sealing. It already has IBIS. You're already 90% of the way there. Just make it to where it can shoot 6K for, 15 minutes, 4K for 30 minutes, shooting an F-Log, shooting an HLG. That's what you have to do. It already doesn't have a grip width, but it is something that if someone is on a budget and they only have about $1,100 to $1,200 to spend, that's what you can get, and you can get the 6K output. You can get all these things that the X-T5, that the X Pro 3 or 4, that the X-H2 would have, but you can get in a smaller, more compact kind of build, and something that you can get into immediately to start making the videos and the crafts you want to make. And the last two for the lineup, the XE lineup and the X100 lineup, are where it's really getting sad. You have to add weather sealing in the XE5. That's just it. But when you add weather sealing in the XE5, there's something I have to ask. Is there really even a benefit to the X100 lineup other than as a cult status kind of thing? Because for the X106, what are you gonna put in there that is better than anything you've done so far? Are you gonna completely weather seal it? You can't add IBIS, that's gonna make it too big. So I mean, what can you do? And that's the question. How much better can the X106 get besides image sensor size and besides image processing? What can you do? Are you gonna do the flippy uppy screen like on the XE4? And what's the point of the XE4? Is the X100V going to be just, or 106 be just the same thing every year, just a refresh with the sensor and with the processor? Maybe you make the lens a little bit sharper? I mean, the biggest jumps in the lineups for the X100 were from the X100S to the X100T, and from the X100F to the X100V, just because of the new lens that's sharper, that a lot of people are saying are sharper than the 23F2, just because the almost completely weather sealing, just because of the video record capabilities. That's kind of what made it what it was, and with the screen being able to flip up. So you're gonna have to do a little bit more. You're gonna have to put a selfie screen on it, of course. You're gonna maybe have to make video record run times a little bit longer. And the biggest thing is you're probably gonna have to make it completely weather sealed and think about putting IBIS in that as well. Now with the XE lineup, if you put IBIS in that, it's game over. Because what is the benefit of getting that over the X100 unless Fujifilm, you put in the X106 a variant to where it's a 28mm focal length, to where people have the X100V or the X106, because again, there's not going to be much you can actually change in that body to keep it the same size, to where you can either get a 35mm effective focal length for the X100V, or you can go to the X106 and get a 28mm focal length for those of us that like a little bit larger documentary style photography, kind of like a la what the Q2 is when it comes to that focal length. Maybe you make monochrome sensors. Maybe you do something stupid and gimmicky like that so that people that are pretentious can buy that, and people that want to pretend like film is still relevant but they hate the process, they can go ahead and they can use that. But there's not really much else you can do. But you have to make the XE5 weather seal. You have to make it weatherproof. There's really no way you can't do that. You are doing that in the X100 lineup. You have to make the XE5 weather seal, that way people can pair up that pancake lens and really go for it. And that brings me to the last thing. For as far as the XT double digit lineup and the XE lineup, you have to have weather sealing, but bring back the pancakes. That's the next part I'm gonna talk about with lenses. How you can make all this work, it's with lenses. Bring pancakes back into the fold, baby. 27 f2.8 was a great start, but what we need is some 2.4, 2.8 aperture Fujicrons that are pancakes. So, you know, whether it be updating the Fujicrons or not, but make that 16mm 2.8 a pancake, baby. That f2 version, or maybe make a 16 f2 version period. Update the 18mm f2 to where it's a Fujicron version now, and make that baby a pancake. For those of us that want a pancake, baby, make it weather resistant. Give us all a 35mm 2.8 and a pancake lens. Yes, you have redundancies, but guess what? People will buy the pancake lenses because they want the small form factor from Fujifilm. Because even for me, the 35mm f2 still sticks out too much. That's why I have the 27 f2.8 WR on my X Pro 3. That's gonna be walking around. That's gonna be the baby that's gonna be getting shine now, is because it's so small. And even more than that, going back to the X Pro 4, Fujifilm, you got to do this because Voigtlander's already coming in, and you've already got all these third-party cameras coming out, or third-party lenses coming. Here's what you got to do, Fujifilm. It's time with the X Pro 4 to release manual focus lenses from Fujifilm. There is no reason why 7 Artisans can release a 35 1.2 lens that's this small. That was one of my favorite lenses of all time because of size, and we can't even think about it. Fujifilm, we're gonna need a 23 f 1.2 or a 1 point something manual focus lens. We're gonna need, and listen, they don't have to look like Leica. They don't have to be Leica inspired. They don't have to be inspired by Canon or old Canon P and Canon 7 mounts lenses. Listen, make them however the hell you want to make them, but make them small, make them manual focus, dampen that manual focus ring, dog. Give us click aperture and make those things sharp as hell. Because again, if Rokinon, if 7 Artisans, TT Artisan, if these companies that are making manual focus lenses, Rokinon and Samyang specifically, if they can make sharp ass manual focus glass, there's no reason why Fujifilm can't. Give us a 35, give us a 50mm, give us a 23mm, and give us an 18mm and manual focus. And I'm telling you, you'll be thinking we're flooding and saturating the market with lenses, but here's the thing, you don't have to put that many of them into production. But I'm telling you right now, people will buy them. People will stop adapting people will leave their in-mount adapters finally, and they'll stop adapting their Voigtlander lenses. They'll stop adapting these Nikkor lenses. If you can just give us the secret sauce, your old Fujica, Fujinon, whatever it was, lenses in a smaller compact manual focus camera to go with the X Pro. If the X Pro is going to be hinting at basically the aesthetic of a Bessa R every single day of its life, you might as well give it that Bessa R feel with these Voigtlander lenses, or Voigtlander size type lenses. So that's basically it, man. That's what I think Fujifilm can do. We've been having conversations about this all morning. I'm just sincerely curious, Fujifilm, what exactly is going on? We've got 5-6 cameras in the lineup, and there's no delineation between any of them. There's no basically way to segregate them, and I don't want it to be a thing where you start hurting the sensor or the processor in some of these cameras so that there's a difference between them. I don't like that. I want the same sensor, I want the same processing power, but you can control what it does depending on what the body can hold, and you can make it better for each and every single person that's a consumer. Basically, Fujifilm figured it out, because again, it's not about being with the camera brand or being loyal. It's about using what makes you a better photographer and what helps you get the job done, no matter what brand it is. So that's it for now. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think. Have a good one.